Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you Cirque's Vice collection for 2024. If you don't know, Cirque Colors puts out their Vice collection, which is a collection of neon creams, usually every May. This year's lineup includes 4 returning shades that were voted on by customers. I think this year they posted on their social media with a link to a survey where you can choose your favorite shades that you'd want to see come back. And so we have 4 returning shades and then 2 brand new neons. As always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end, but for now, let's just get into the swatches. The first of the returning shades is Plastik, and this one is a deep neon magenta pink. I would say this is pretty color accurate, like it almost looks fuchsia, but it's still very magenta with a purple undertone. And as you saw from that first coat alone, this had incredible coverage. Cirque's creams in general are very full coverage, very opaque with amazing formulas, and their neons are no exception. If anything, I actually think it's more impressive that the neons have the same formula because typically neons can be very thin and streaky and you need to build them up in 3 coats, but these were super pigmented, and I did end up doing a second coat just to make sure it was fully opaque. Next we have Electric Daisy, and this is a neon highlighter yellow. You can see from that first swipe alone just how opaque and creamy and pigmented this formula is. It really is impressive how eye-searing of a color this is, even on 1 coat alone. There definitely are still some dark spots, so you are going to want a second coat to fully cover that up. I feel like maybe in certain angles of light you might be able to see some nail line, but I think it was a lot more noticeable on camera than in real life. I know the shade is so iconic, but I can't help but think it's a little overrated because we just tend to see these neon highlighter yellows all the time. The next returning shade we have is High Roller, and this one is described as a neon mint green, which I think is so interesting because that is not how I would describe this one at all. I think I would just call this like a neon turquoise kind of shade because it does have a green undertone, but just not nearly enough to be minty. Either way though, this one is absolutely beautiful. I'm definitely the most excited about this one because I voted for it to come back. I did find the formula on this was a little bit more sheer, or maybe just not self-leveling like the other shades. You probably could see how streaky it was on the first coat, but it did build up beautifully in just 2, and I found it opaque enough for me. Maybe there's a little hint of nail line, but I just don't think you need a third. And the last of the returning shades is Guilty Pleasure, which is described as a neon purple. I think this one might be picking up a little bit lighter than it actually is, and maybe a little bit more red leaning because I think this is supposed to lean a bit more blue toned. It's kind of hard to say. It's just one of those purples that's very in between and hard to categorize, so apologies for that. Either way, it definitely is a super vibrant shade with another amazing formula, but I honestly was surprised to see this one voted back in because I feel like when it originally launched, a lot of people thought it was too dark to be a neon, so I'm curious to know if you voted for this one. And now for the 2 new shades, the first one we have is Road Rage, and this is a neon red with pink undertones. So again, I have to apologize because these types of shades are just so hard to capture. Like on my end, I feel like I could see this leaning a little bit orange, but it really is on the other side of it where it's a red, almost hot pink kind of color. Absolutely eye-searing. I love this one so much, and I'm sure that's going to be a fan favorite. The formula, just like the others, was absolutely incredible. Very even coverage on the first coat, but just a little bit sheer. I did stop it at 2 coats, but I could see you needing a third for this one, especially if you don't want any visible nail line. And the other new shade we have is Mile High Club, and this is a neon cobalt blue. This one is absolutely stunning. It is just one of those blues that punches you in the face, takes your breath away. So incredibly vibrant, and again, another amazing formula. This one I would say was pretty similar to the last shade where it was very even coverage, but just a little bit sheer on the first coat. But on the second coat, I saw even less nail line than I did with Road Rage, so I really don't think you would need a third for this one, especially because it's so dark. But I still really love it. It's not the typical neon shade I would think of, but it is definitely one of my favorites. And here is the Vice collection worn as a skittle. I'm wearing 2 coats of each with both Guilty Pleasure and Plastik on my ring finger, and they are just so incredibly bright. I think they look really great here on 2 coats, but granted, this is my other hand where my nails are a lot shorter, so you might need a 3rd coat for some of the lighter shades like Electric Daisy and High Roller. Now getting into comparisons, when I first saw Plastik, I was immediately reminded of Socialite from the 2022 collection, but as you can see, that one is a lot lighter of a pink. Maybe mine is faded a little bit, but definitely not a dupe. I think one of the closest shades that I had to Plastik is China Glaze's Sugar Junkie from last year's Hello Sugar collection. Seeing them in the bottle, I was really convinced that they were going to be dupes, but you really do see a difference on the nail where Plastik is just a little bit darker with more of that purple undertone, and the China Glaze just looks very hot pink. I did also want to quickly show this next to ILNP's Pixel Pink from last year's Arcade collection. I wouldn't consider this a neon like some of their other creams, but it was the closest pink that they had to Plastik. Then for Electric Daisy, I wanted to compare it to the last time they brought back Electric Daisy, which was in 2022. If you don't know, neons do tend to fade over time, and these definitely looked the most similar in the bottle, so I was kind of hopeful that Electric Daisy did not fade. But once you see them side by side, you might be able to see that this year's version on the left is a little bit brighter, like it has more of that eye-searing neon kind of color. I also wanted to show Electric Daisy next to C.R.E.A.M, which they brought back in last year's Vice collection. And while they definitely look really similar, C.R.E.A.M I would say is more of a true green, where it's not as yellow leaning like that highlighter or tennis ball kind of color that Electric Daisy is, so I wouldn't call these dupes. A shade that I thought would be even closer to Electric Daisy would be ILNP's Playlist from their Pool Party collection a couple of summers ago. I mean, in the bottle, they definitely look like they could be dupes, but there actually is a difference on the nail where I would say Playlist is a little bit more on the green side, and it also has a slightly more crelly formula. It might even be a little bit darker too. Then for High Roller, I immediately wanted to see it next to Essie's It's High Time from last year's spring collection. I had shared it as one of my spring favorites this year and thought it was like a really bright option, but it looks so dusty next to High Roller because obviously that one is a neon. So I thought maybe something more similar would be Mooncat's Paradise Found from their Technicolor Dreams collection, which are very bright pastels. They're not classified as neons at all, but these ended up being surprisingly similar in terms of their vibrancy. But I think you can tell that High Roller is more of a true neon, and obviously there's also a little bit of a color difference too. Then I remembered ILNP's Bottoms Up from the same Pool Party collection as Playlist, and I thought these were going to be a lot closer. They look really similar in the bottle, but seeing them on the nail, they are so incredibly different. Bottoms Up is still super bright and very much like a neon shade. It's just a little bit darker and more green leaning than High Roller. And for a quick color reference, I did want to show this next to Lagoon Jelly from the most recent Glaze collection. Obviously that is a jelly formula, so it's going to be super sheer, but it's also just more blue. I have a few more comparisons, starting with this Unnamed Color Club Charlotte Russe collab kind of shade. Definitely one of my favorites from my collection, but it's a lot more blue leaning, so I thought maybe something even closer would be Orly's Vintage. It's another absolute favorite in my collection, and I feel like it looks even brighter than High Roller does, like it's more neon, but when you see them on the nail, High Roller really does look the most neon out of the three. Color-wise, I would say that it is closer to Orly's Vintage, but not enough that it would be a dupe. Similar to Electric Daisy, I wanted to compare my new bottle of Guilty Pleasure to the original from 2022, and I was so surprised to see the difference here. Like I mentioned before, neons tend to fade, and so do some purple pigments, so I was pretty much expecting my older bottle to look even lighter than this year's version, but as you can see, these are just two completely different shades. I also have a quick bottle comparison for ILNP's High Score from last year's Arcade collection. I thought that these were going to be a lot closer because they're both like neon purples, but obviously High Score is more blue. So I thought a closer kind of red leaning purple option would be Mooncat's Lost Polaroids from their Ultra Vibrant set. But as you can see, that one is a lot lighter, a lot more pinky leaning, so definitely not a dupe. Then for Road Rage, I of course had to show this next to Game Over, which they brought back in last year's Vice collection. That one is a true neon red shade, so it's hard to see, but Road Rage really does have a little bit more pink. And on the other side of the red hot spectrum is Pyro, which is like a red orange kind of shade. My bottle is actually a little bit faded, believe it or not, but you can still tell that it's very much orange. So for some other hot pinky red options, I thought China Glaze's Tan-Burr-ine lines from last year's Inside Scoop collection or something would be kind of similar, but that one is too pink and also kind of a jelly formula. I think the other closest shade that I have in my collection is ILNP's Vaporwave, again from the Arcade collection last summer. These are incredibly similar, but they are not exact dupes, believe it or not. I just think that Road Rage has more of that true eye-searing neon quality where it's just a little bit brighter than Vaporwave and also a little bit more pink as well. The difference might be hard to tell on camera, but you can definitely see it in real life. And lastly, for Mile High Club, I of course had to show this next to Sky High from the 2022 Vice collection. I feel like these look a little bit more similar on camera than they are in real life. Sky High is just a little bit lighter. I thought that Orly's Off the Grid would be another similar cobalt blue, but as you can see, this one is a little bit lighter and almost more dusty than Mile High Club, so these ended up being super different. For a deeper cobalt, I thought that OPI's Ring in the Blue Year would be a really good match, and I was pretty convinced again that these were going to be dupes in the bottle, but seeing them side by side on the nail, you can definitely tell a difference. These three just make like a really perfect gradient, where Mile High Club is just pretty much in the middle of Sky High and Ring in the Blue Year. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Cirque's Vice 2024 collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this year's lineup. Did you vote for any of these 4 shades to come back? And what do you think of the 2 new ones? Like I mentioned, I did vote for High Roller, so I am very excited to see that one come back. But I'm not gonna lie, I am a little disappointed to see Electric Daisy make its comeback for like the 5th time. I honestly feel like at this point, Cirque should just make that shade a permanent color because it just comes back year after year. And I get it because it's the iconic neon highlighter kind of color, but I feel like that's the shade that is most common when you see other brands make neon polishes. And so personally, I would rather see like any other color besides that one. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts, but I would love to know what you think of this lineup, especially compared to last year's, because I feel like last year a lot of people didn't like that collection, mainly for the 3 pastel neons, but obviously those were totally my vibe. And don't get me wrong, I do still like this collection. Like, they are so in-your-face neon with amazing formulas, arguably the best on the market, so I'm still gonna enjoy them this summer, and especially to use them in some nail art. If you really like them too, as a reminder, I am an affiliate with Cirque, so you can shop these while supporting me and my channel through the link in my description box. As always, a big thank you if you do support me through that, but either way, I would love to know your thoughts so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!